Subscriber question: how does spiraling impact your manifestation? If you want to know what I'm thinking about it, then you gotta stay tuned. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another rousing episode of Spill the Tea Tuesday. My name is Flossie, and I'm like the funniest, wittiest mindset coach, as well as your OG Hype You Up Rampage Queen here on YouTube. If you want one-on-one coaching with me, links are going to be in the description box below. Keep in mind, the VIP group is now here on YouTube, and we, Nikki and myself, are doing a challenge that is 9 episodes long, making a play on the words for our manifestation station. It's going to be all about glowing up. So it is already started. You're going to want to join. There's 2 levels, as you know. One is for the challenge and replays, and then the other is challenge, replays, and getting to participate in the VIP lives and ask your questions. So, you know, I love my calendar. And before I get to the topic at hand, we're going to put a manifestation spin on my calendar. This says, get your ass in air fucking conditioning. You know what? If you're a master of manifesting, your ass can be anywhere you want. And if you want to be in the air conditioning, the sun, the cold, doesn't matter. You can manifest whatever and avoid bugs fucking everywhere if you wish, or manifest a bunch of bugs. I really don't care. It's your reality. This says Wednesdays are temporary. Chill the fuck out. The 3D is temporary, and y'all need to chill the F out about that too. Facts, because sometimes y'all get too focused on the shiznits going on in the 3D, forget that the 3D is basically an illusion, so to speak, or at least that's what I refer to it as, and take the 3D as hardcore facts, and then you're spiraling, which is what we're going to talk about today. This says focus on the fucking present. How about focus on the fucking present thoughts that you're having? Because we don't care about the necessarily current 3D reality if it's not in line with what we want, because we are going to stay laser focused on what we want, focused on what's going on in our head. And this says, oh, this is so tiny. So let's see. This says, what? And I cannot stress this enough, the fuck. That's what we sometimes say when the 3D is not in reality, when we want to experience. But you know what? We're masters of manifesting, and we can literally put a snooze on that shit. And it can literally be the weekend whenever we want, because we can have anything that we want. Now, anyhow, I'm going to set my calendar down and get to the topic at hand. So, Unicorn 365. She writes a question. She writes a question. I started a spiral for weeks in the middle of my transition period. Today, I started to affirm and persist again. How will this affect my manifestation going forward? What will happen now? So, as far as what will happen now, it's going to be based on your assumptions. What I choose to assume, and what I tell my clients when talking about spiraling is, well, to understand this fully, we need to think about my oil and the water and the cup analogy. I recently talked about that in a video, but I will post the old video that Nikki and I made together that talked about the analogy that I've been using for years that I created about the oil and the water and the cup. And I'm going to link that over here. Why? Because it's a really great video, and it explains mental diet and how manifestation can work. But briefly, for those who have not seen it, imagine that you have a cup that you can see through. I know that you can't fully see through this bottle, but just as kind of an example, imagine that you have a clear cup that you can see through, and there's some oil in it. And the amount of oil that is in that cup depends on the amount of negative, nasty-ass thoughts that you thought to get into the boat that you're in. Like all the negative thoughts that you've had about whatever it is that you're manifesting, that topic, whether it's SP, money, whatever. But it's all the negative thoughts that you have thought about that topic. And this cup has oil, right? So when you affirm or you think thoughts in line with your manifestation, you are adding water to that cup. Now, if you recall, water is actually denser than oil, meaning it is heavier. The water is going to go to the bottom. The oil is going to go towards the top, right? Just think about oil and vinegar, or think about when you're cooking and there's oil in the meat or in the food, and that sits on top of, like, if you're making a soup or a sauce or whatever. So now getting back to the cup, because I got a little sidetracked for a second talking about sauces, trying to give a visual to you guys. But anyway, you're affirming, you're persisting, you're putting water, in this cup. These wonderful, pure thoughts that are in line with your manifestation are the water that's going. And if you start thinking negative thoughts about your manifestation, you're just adding more oil. Well, the goal is to get the cup to what I would consider approximately a 70-30 split, meaning 70% water, 30% oil, because it's becoming the dominant thought in your mind about that topic is the thoughts in line with your manifestation. And when that starts to happen, your mind is going to have a certain level of a buy-in, a certain level of acceptance that what you're thinking, what you're affirming, you know, the thoughts in line with your manifestation, that those thoughts could possibly be true. Not are fully true, not believed without a doubt, but could possibly be true. And guess what? It goes to subconscious, where you manifest from, and it can come forth to manifest. Your 3D reality can start to conform. But the question is, you know, so someone's going through a transition period. And a transition period is something that coaches have talked about in order to try to describe to people in the manifestation community why, when you are manifesting something, can the 3D like show the opposite or seem like really like janky, like a bunch of shiznit is going on. A lot of times that's referred to as a transition period or a purge, or some people call it a bridge of incidents, but you're kind of always on the bridge of incidents leading towards your manifestations. No, I'm not liking some of this video. So getting back to the topic at hand, I was talking about the oil and the water in the cup analogy and potentially going through a transition or purge. Do transition or purges real quick for those of you who might worry have to happen? Not necessarily. Do they sometimes happen? Yes. And so therefore coaches do talk about transitions or purges, and you know, transition or purge, like if you're thinking about the oil and the water in the cup analogy, when you're putting a bunch of water in and a whole bunch of oil's coming out, that oil's got to come somewhere. Like, you know, it's got to go somewhere. You're putting in a bunch of water, the oil's coming out. Sometimes people feel a little bit more emotional and they consider that like a purge or transition. Sometimes they feel like the 3D looks a little janky, you know, wonky, whatever, where there's some old story rapidly playing out, or it just seems like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, which can quite often be based on the assumptions that people hold about their 3D reality, about what it is that they're manifesting, about what the unfolding might look like. So do you have to have a transition or purge? No. Do they sometimes happen? Yes. What do you do when a purge or transition happens? Try to stay laser focused on what you want. But the question specifically is, this person spiraled and they want to know what is going to happen. So talking about the oil and the water in the cup, if you spiral and you spiral for weeks and you're in the middle of your 3D reality conforming, how is it going to affect your manifestation going forward? You know, it doesn't have to affect it by much. Don't concern yourself thinking that you have to start all over again with what you're doing, because you're not going to lose your progress that you've made. Whatever water that you've put in that cup, whatever, you know, affirming and persisting and keeping your thoughts in line with your manifestation that you've done is going to remain in the cup. The most that you might have added was a little bit of oil. The most that you might have done is caused a small amount of an unintentional delay by adding some oil to that cup. How much of a delay? I mean, it depends like how long truly you spiral for and how much you lament for. But the good news is it doesn't have to be very much or for long. So what's going to happen now? If you start affirming and persisting, you're going to just keep on the momentum that you've already built. I would say if you spiral, I mean, of course, the best thing to do is not to spiral in the first place. And I'll link a video here where I talk about how to avoid a spiral to even begin with. And I believe I also talk about what to do if you have a spiral, like how to get yourself back on the horse. But the most important thing to do when you do have a spiral is to what? Get back on the horse and get back to affirming and persisting. When we see things in 3D that we don't prefer, especially during a transition period where we're thinking that our manifestation is going to start coming in, and then what we see instead is maybe some old story playing out or some 3D hood shit bullshit that we don't prefer, sometimes we react to that. And with sometimes that happens, we have what is called to a spiral, which a spiral is essentially a bunch of negative ass, nasty ass thinking to the point that, like, you know, you're practically on the floor wanting to be in a crying hot mess. Or you're having like a bunch of negative ass thoughts and you've spiraled and you don't feel like you can pull out of it. We all have spiraled a time or two. I know that I have. The goal is if you do have a spiral, don't set up camp there, and try not to be there for weeks, because then it feels like more like despair, desperation, and lack. And that can be a little harder mentally to snap out of, but you can snap out of it. Sometimes though, you just have to make yourself do it. You have to make yourself. It's like if you stop going to the gym, like if you have someone who goes to the gym all the time and they stop going for whatever reason, they might have to initially make themselves go, but then when they get back in their routine and they get back on track, they're doing perfectly fine. The quickest way that I tend to find to snap out of a spiral is to force myself to do the FU letter and command letter. I know I talk about that all the time. I know you guys sometimes probably get sick of hearing it, but it's very effective to get out of the emotion that you feel about what you've seen in the 3D or what has happened or whatever it is that you are spiraling and reacting to. You write that FU letter to that person, if it's, you know, a person, or to that concept, or to that entity, whatever that it is, saying whatever you want to say to their face, how you feel how you feel about manifesting that in your 3D reality, unless of course it's trauma or when you were a child, and you destroy it. You write the FU letter, and then you follow it up with a command letter. I'm going to link video here that talks about how to do that, so I don't spend a bunch of time talking about that here. But the first thing to get back on the horse is to do that FU letter, command letter. And you know what? That puts a lot of water in the cup. FU letters, I feel like, start spooning out some of the oil, to be honest with you, because you're writing that letter and getting rid of that resistance. You're getting rid of that, like that negative thinking that you've been holding on to, that is the oil in the cup in the first place. Because the oil, if you think about it, I know that I refer to it as like the negative, nasty ass thoughts that you thought to get the boat that you're in, but it's also like your resistance. Because I talked about in another video where, you know, resistance is essentially a lot of times like the negative thinking that we have about that manifestation. The old story that we're holding on to, like that's essentially a lot of times what resistance is. And so if you're writing the FU letter and you are basically like getting it out, getting it off of your chest, it's like you're just flinging some of that oil out of that cup anyway. And then when you're doing the command letter, you're putting a bunch of water in that cup, because you are stepping into your power as the operant power of your reality, telling the person, the entity, the concept, the way that it is, like that's just the way that it is, facts. I can link my command letter video here that talks about that specifically, but you can write a command letter to anything, including yourself. Same with the FU/resistance letter. So what is it going to do to your manifestation going forward? Maybe a small amount of a delay, but the faster that you get back on the horse and the more that you use the tools to deal with your resistance and step into your power and, you know, start adding more water into that cup so that it can become your, you know, you can have a 70-30 split, have more water than oil so that your dominant thought can be what you want to experience so that your 3D reality can conform. The faster that you're going to get your shiznit. A spiral isn't going to kill you. A spiral is not going to make sure that you don't get your manifestation. That's not how it works. A spiral is not going to get rid of all the effort that you've done so far. It might add a little bit of oil, but it's not like it's going to take all the water that you've been doing for, you know, days, weeks, or even months and throw it out. That's not how it is. You're going to have the water that you've already put in that cup. You just need to get back on the horse so that you can get back to having your momentum. What's going to happen now? You're going to get your manifestations. What's going to happen now, because you're going to start using the tools of the FU letter, command letter, and then affirm and persist. And then your 3D reality is going to have to conform. If you were already at the point of having a transition to where your 3D reality was starting to conform, or, you know, get a little wonky because the conforming was about to happen, you will get back to that place. And in my opinion, you can get back there fairly quickly. You just need to get back on the horse now, and then try to prevent spirals in the future. Stay laser focused on what you want. Keep affirming and persisting for what you want. So spiral is not going to make it to where you can't have your manifestation. It's not going to put the kibosh in to where you're never going to get your manifestation. You can still get your manifestation even if you spiral. Even if you spiral again, you can still have it. If you use the tools though, FU letter, command letter, you can even look at EFT tapping. I have that in multiple videos. So does Sammy, so does Nikki. But you can use those tools to help prevent a spiral in the first place. And I do talk about, I've already linked the video about how to avoid how to recognize when you're going to have a spiral and to avoid it to begin with. But you're going to still get your manifestation if you keep affirming and persisting for it. Just keep going. Pick yourself up. It's okay that you've had a spiral. We've all had a spiral. I've had a spiral. I don't know a single person who has not at one point in their journey had a spiral. I think everybody's probably had a spiral, and that's okay. because we're here having a human experience. We have human emotions. And if we see or experience things that are not in line with what we want or are, you know, or would be painful, we might have a reaction to that. And that's okay. It's just try not to have that reaction forever. Try not to like set up camp in the victim mentality spiral community. Let's just, you know, have our little shiznit, fiznit fit for a second or two, a few minutes, write the FU letter, command letter, throw that shit in the trash, get back on the horse, and get our shiznit. Be part of the GYS crew, yo, and get your shit. Don't sit there in your spiral. Get out of it, get back on your routine, keep affirming and persisting for what you want, and have the 3D reality conform. And if you have any more transition anymore, know what it is. Be like, you know what, this is old story wrapping up. I'm not going to give a period because I'm the operant power here. I don't care. Don't care. Or revise on the spot or use any of the other tools that we talk about, give you, so that you can get to the finish line of getting your shiznit. So don't worry about your spiral. Put the worry in the garbage can. You know that she's always hungry for your trash, and then just keep going. The spiral is not going to derail you. Maybe a mild, tiny delay that you're not going to care about. Why? Because you're going to get back on that horse and hit it harder and get your shiznit even faster. So that's all I've got to say about that. Anyhow, I hope this video has been helpful to you. Drop any comments, questions, concerns below, video ideas, because you know that eventually I'll try to check them out. And as usual, I'll talk to you later. Bye.